This is where I left the open wagon, GWR open wagon 02, which is a 7 plank 10 ton 4-wheel wagon that I'm going to be making for Trainz railsim, and this is in Gmax, and this is as far as I got. I showed you how the side and end elevations were and the floor plan were brought into Gmax at the correct scale and in the correct proportions. And note that I've got texture correction turned on, otherwise if we turn it off it's not correct. So we definitely want it correct, because we are using the scanned in scale plans as a guide for making the wagon. And what I like to do now is grid and snap settings. The home grid at the moment it's set, this is just a conversion from the metrics, so what I tend to do is I like 1 foot spacing every and major lines every 10 feet, and that's what we've got here. This is the grid, so we've got 10 feet because I'm working in feet and inches. Feet inches, decimal inches, that is 12 inches to the foot, but then not half inches or quarter inches, but point whatever it is. And our the piece I'm going to make today, the mesh I'm going to make it in this session, which is the second session of making these making this wagon. Now I'm going to take it fairly slowly, these aren't going to be long sessions, but this session is going to be making a wheel. And if we look in, if we zoom in, and we can see the wheel is 3 foot 1 inch in diameter. 3 foot 1 inch, there we are, there it is, it says it there as well. So between there and there is the 3 foot 1 inch wheel. And if we have a look at the photograph which I'm using as a guide, and I could probably find other photographs that would be suitable for showing this wagon. Now this is the one that I showed in the first video. It's the 7 plank wagon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there it is, but it's been adapted, as it says here, in 1914 for the conveyance of horses and mules in army service during World War I. So it's had these extra planks added here, just so as to encourage the animals to keep their heads inside the confines of the wagon, and it's had these rings added for tying up the animals. I don't think I actually tied them up. I mean, tethering is probably a more accurate word. Tying them up, it sounds like they were it sounds like they had their legs all tied together or whatever and they travelled upside down or something. But also here there's some variations. As I mentioned last time, there's this mount here which is for the bar, which should be there over the top, which has been removed for this. But otherwise this wagon is going to give us a lot of information. And all I'm going to do in this session is I'm going to make one of these wheels, and you can make the wheels as simple or as complex as you like. 2 wheels plus the axle will make the bogey. That will be a separate model, and it will be called by the wagon body as a dependency, and it will be added on to the wagon when it's assembled by Trainz. But I will be exporting the 2 wheels and the axle as the separate bogey. What I might do, what I'm considering as it's going through my brain at the moment here, what I might do is actually make the 2 wheels and then the axle boxes and the springing. I might make that all as part of the bogey, so that actually the model itself of the wagon would then just comprise of the brake handle and brake pieces here and underneath, and then everything above the sole bar up to the wagon height there, including the buffers. I'm not going to include animated 3-link coupling. I was tempted to do that. I tried that on my Great Western Railway carriages, of which I've still got quite a lot more to make. But for some reason I'm not quite sure whether it was that or whether it was something else. Just selecting it within Trainz seemed to be a little bit iffy, and I was just wondering if that was part of the problem. Can't say it is, but you know, you've got to just try and experiment with these things. Okay, so let's have a go at making that wheel. So we know it's 3 feet 1 inch from there to there, and we can see the profile here because we can see here the flange. that's added to the wheel, which is obviously greater than 3 foot 1 inch diameter. And but this line here is just this line here, because that's the line you can see sitting on the rail. And overall I'm going to make that about 6 inches wide, I think is the normal way I make that. So the depth is 6 inches plus the flange itself. Now we can make this really quite complex if we wanted to. We could spend, if we just go back into, let's zoom in here, let's see this, and let's make sure the texture correction is on, and let's zoom in and have a look at the wheel, and we can see here that we've got the wheel. You can just see the piece there, the flange going down it, and I did determine that this is correct, that the gauge is between obviously the outer edge of the flange there and the outer edge of the flange there. Get these measurements right at the beginning and you'll save yourself a lot of grief. I speak as one who knows. So okay, let's have less of the chat and more of the action. So it's going to be a tube, and let's just draw a tube. There we are, and the third movement gives me the depth. So first movement, holding down the left hand key, left hand mouse button, does this. Releasing it gives me control over the inner, or indeed outer, edge of the tube, and then moving the mouse again, and you'll see over on the left hand side there's the height right over on the left hand side of this screen. I can't move the mouse to show you because I'm moving it to make this over on the left hand side of the height is going crazy. Height just means, in this case, means depth or thickness of the wheel. So we don't want two wheels, so I'm going to delete that one. So this is what I'm going to work with. Okay, and it looks pretty grim. So we're going to edit it. And the first thing we need to do, I think, is to ensure that it is only one segment, not 5 height segments. If we jump into this view, I'll show you what that means. Wireframe, and what it's done is that this is just the default in Gmax, or this particular version of Gmax, which is the Trainz game pack. And this particular standard, as it were, the pro forma, the standard tube gives us 5 segments. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't need all of those, not by any means. We only need one. So if I alter this over here, bring it down to 1, there we are, that's our wheel. The importance of that is that the number of polys is now 1/5 of the original number, and we certainly don't need all those extra polys because they won't be doing anything. They'll just be subdividing something which is a single face there instead of 5 faces there, for example. There's no need for all those. Sides, I'm not even worrying about the radii at the moment. Radii, this is we've got 3 foot 1 inch diameter, which means the radius is 1 foot 6.5 inches. Let's have a go in changing that. So the first thing that we want is that the inner radius needs to be about, well, let's just guess at the moment, let's say 1 foot 4, and the outer radius, which is the actual radius of the wheel, is 1 foot 6.5. There we are, and that's the radius of our wheel. Let's have a look here. Okay, and let's just move it down a bit. And it looks correct. Let's have a look there. It looks about the right width, doesn't it? Maybe a little, needs to be a little bit wider than that. So let's make the internal radius, that's too much if we compare it to the photograph. Unless you can actually get down to one of these wagons with a ruler and measure it, and it's very much doing it by eye. I haven't got one near me. I only got Irish rolling stock near me, or not even that near me. Okay, so let's get it into position, because at the moment it's standing up above. This is our ground level, this is our rail top, so it should be, it needs to be that position needs to be the radius of the wheel to make that 0. So it needs to be down here, bottom right, needs to be 1 foot 6.5. Should bring it right there. Let's have a look. Yep, it's right touching there. Look further close. I'm zooming in. There we are. I'm zooming out again, and that's what we're going to work with. And we're going to say that the wheel itself is about 4 inches width, and the flange can be a couple of inches, maybe a little too much. Let's have a look at our photograph again, getting an idea. Maybe 4.5 and 1.5. Okay, so we'll make this 4.5 inches deep, and that is actually our height measurement. I know this, it's not height, but so it's 0 feet 4.5 inches. And now if we look at it over top right here, we can see it's much, it was out there, now it's just down to the 4.5 inches. Okay, so have a look in the wireframe. Now the thing about a circle in any 3D program, 3D rendering, unless you've got a machine that can handle, I don't know, incredible supercomputer, can handle world stock market or something, or mission to Mars, rendering is going to always be a problem, and it's always a compromise, and that's because these 3D items are made up of flat surfaces which in themselves comprise straight lines, and we can see here that this flat surface, the face of the wheel, is actually made up of a series of they're not rectangles, are they? What are they called? Anyway, they're sort of rectangular. Okay, there's straight lines here all the way around. I'm sure the name of them will jump back at me. I'm no mathematician. Okay, so that doesn't look very good. I know it's going to be fairly small when you see it in Trainz, and you could probably think, well, I'll probably get away with that. It won't look too bad. It won't look like it's going down around the track going click, 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 click as all these bits turn round. But even at that, let's see, at that distance, let's have a look. It's still not too keen on that at all. So what I'm going to do is, in my tube, and we've left it as a tube still, I'm going to increase the sides, the number of sides. It says smooth. I don't know if that makes much noise. No, it doesn't. Anyway, sides, and it should be divisible by 4. I found that it's useful if you have it divisible by 4. So 18 obviously isn't. 20, 24, 28, 32. So let's go up to 24 sides and see if that looks a bit better, which it does. It can fool the eye to think that it's more of a circle. 28. Oops. Even nicer. 32. Now the point about this, 32 is really nice. The point about it, if we have a look from a distance, there we are. Look, that looks a lot nicer, doesn't it? A lot smoother. But the problem with this is always that you're working on the number of polygons. Here we are. Here's the little one that you want. Under tools, under the hammer, polygon, little window there. 256. So let's just have a go. Let's just go back. And if we look at this, we look at the sizes. Now we can save polys, and we're always wanting to save polys. Low poly counts wherever we can get away with it. If we take it down to 28, you can see how it's adjusting, but also you can see here it's now down to 230. It's the lower one. It's the upper one, 224, 230. That's including those the planes, which we're obviously going to delete before we ever export it or whatever. So 28 takes it down to 224, 24, 192, 18, which is what it was, 20 takes it down to 160, 18 just 144. I'm going to put this back up to 32. I'm prepared, as it were, to spend budget. It's a really good term. That is your budget. That's your fixed amount. And you've got 10,000 there. And I never try 1,000 there rather for each object, 10,000 overall. I never try to breach that. In fact, I try to get much smaller than that. And that will assist the engine, the graphics engine in Trainz, in drawing the wheel nice and smooth, or as smooth as it's reasonable to be within the program, and won't flog your graphics card at all. Now, one other thing I want to do is, you can see the origin point is on the 0, the vertical 0, and it's on the 0 there, but that's the center point as it is, because that's where I commenced to draw it. So I want to center that on the tube. So up to here, affect the pivot, which is what that is, the center, and there you see it. Okay, and center it to the object, and it jumps into the, it's already centered, so it was already centered around here, and now it's centered into the thickness, which we adjusted to 4.5, and align it to the world, and it changed. It's still centered, but it's aligned, and eventually you want all of your meshes aligned. Just use that aligned to the world, so they're all aligned in the same way. Really crucial. When I first started making these, along with Ricky many years back now, what we would do is excuse me, is make half of the model and then mirror for the other half, and we couldn't work out why it looked like it was inside out when we got it into Trainz. And the problem, of course, was that having made it like this and then mirrored it and rotated it 180 degrees, it was now no longer aligned to the world. The referencing, the visual referencing, was incorrect for the half of the model. So I'm going to come back to that, because reset X form is the beast to use for that, and that's a final job. You don't want to do it at this stage. Okay, so we're going to make a basic wheel. And we've got that. We've got the basic wheel, and there it is with its 32 sides, and it's 4.5 inches thick, which is going to be fine for the rail. And now what we want to do is make the flange. It's going to go on the side of that. We're going to make the flange from a separate tube and just whack it up against this tube. So first thing to do then is use this tube. Why make it all again? Because we know we've got all the pieces. I'm just cloning. That's holding down the shift key and then the movement key, and that gives me a clone. And now it's exactly the same diameter. So the internal diameter of that tube is the same as the one we've just done, and yet the internal diameter of that tube, and it's in the wrong position there as far as I'm concerned. I think it wants to go this way. There we are. So that's just me, and I'm going to give it a different colour. There we are, just to differentiate it, bubblegum colours. Now the internal diameter of that tube is got to be the same as this, because it's not going to be made, I don't want to show it as a separate piece with some sort of difficulty, some sort of problem. How can I describe that? I want it to look as if this is one piece, but I'm going to make it out of 2 meshes. So here what I could do, if we look back at our wheel, let's have a look at our wheel again. There it is. Now you can see there's the flange. I mean, this is the main wheel itself, the tyre, which actually sits on the rail. You can see when we come to the edge, it isn't a sharp 90-degree edge. There is a curve there, just at that point. Now we could model that. It would really push the polys up, make them go bonkers. It's really a bit unnecessary. Similarly, on the flange, this outer edge of the flange, it's got almost like a 180-degree curve on the end of it in the profile of the flange. Again, that would take zillions of polys, thousands I was going to say, hundreds anyway of polys, and would barely be noticed, if at all, in Trainz. So we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is going to leave that sharp edge there, that outer edge you see, and indeed the inner edge as well, because I had a bit of a nice soft, and in fact it's got an inner tyre there, which we might well model that. Come back to that. It'd be quite nice, wouldn't it, to model that? Wouldn't be too big an addition. And remember, these are going to be the bogey, so they're going to be a separate model, although they will be added to the main one when it appears in Trainz. Okay, so we keep the internal, the inner radius of our cloned tube. And what are we looking at there? Maybe an inch. So let's go to, for the outer one, let's change that to 1.7. There we are, let's have a look. And there it is, the outer one, red one, there's that. Inner one, I think it's a little more than that. So let's go up 1.5 inches. Oh, that's the wrong one, wasn't it? That's clever. There we are. 8. There we are. I think that looks a bit better. Now, it's the same width as our main wheel, main part of the wheel, the tyre. We don't want that because that's 4.5. We know that because the clone is 4.5. So we want this one to be 1.5. And together they then make 6 inches, which is going to comprise the wheel. I'm just going to change the position, the view of that from front to back, just so that it reflects that as well. And then what we can do is we can, well, you see there, actually, it's a good point, there's the center point is no longer centered on our mesh. So again, just automatically come up here, effect pivot, center to object, align to world. It should be aligned anyway, but just for the sake of it, just do that, because it just keeps everything in position. You can begin to see now it's beginning to look a little like a flanged wheel. Come right in, and there we are. That's the beginning of our flanged wheel, but we want it to make it look a little bit better than that. I think we want to make it a little more interesting, visually interesting. Now, although it's these bubblegum colours at the moment, we will find that once we start texturing it, that it will become visually much more interesting, much more looking like a railway wheel, let's put it that way. Now what I want to do here, the next piece I'm going to do is, I want to do, if we zoom right in, you can see that there's an inner section to every wheel coming around here, to which the spokes are attached, and they come in about, I would say, about 1/4 inch. So we're going to reproduce that. We're going to reproduce that now, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take a clone of the wheel again, and I'm going to bring, and the thickness of it, it's about the same, isn't it? If that bit there is the difference between the two, that's 4 inches there, from side to side, and so if that's 4 inches, that's less than an inch there, isn't it? What I said. Or maybe it's an inch. Okay, so we'll make it an inch. So this is the one here, and what I'm going to do is make the internal radius, internal radius 1.2 and the external radius 1.3, and so it'll sit inside. But also I'm going to make the overall thickness, the overall width of the wheel, 6 inches, and I'm going to give it another colour, something bizarre. Really great to have all these bright colours, because then you can muck about with them. And then I'm going to centre it. If I'd have been really clever, I'd have found some sort of common centre point and done the whole thing like that, with these positioning automatically. But I'm going to do it by eye, which is the way you tend to do these things. Now 6 inches is going to be too much. Let's just have a look at that, because that's the overall width of the wheel, and we're going to have it. The reason why it's too much, if I go back to my original, is because this is set in. See, there's a, there, look, there's a little, that inner piece is set into the tyre, the outer wheel. So let's, and we reckoned it was about 1/4 inch. So if we make that not 6 inches, but we make it 5.5 and centre. Now like I say, if I'd have been really clever, I'd have kept some sort of overall center position, which this then would automatically jump to. In other words, I wouldn't have centered those two, but given them a common center. I suppose I can do that. Let's try that. I can group them. Okay. And then let's center the group. Okay. And then let's try, I'm not sure if this works or whether it's just going to center on the individual. Let's try X. No, it's centering on the blue. It doesn't center on the group, it centers on the individual item. So it's no good. So we'll ungroup those because we don't want them grouped up. And let's take our yellow one and just move it into position. If you want to get, if you are, I was going to say, exceptionally concerned about the position, then what you can do is you can make a box which is 1/4 of an inch in size. Notice I had to zoom out before it would let me do that. One of the weird quirks of Gmax is that if you zoom in and try and make a box, it won't. You need to make a big box. So let's zoom in there. There we are. This is just for measurement. We know that's 1/4 of an inch because I just said that. Not worried about the other dimensions. So bring that over to there. Make sure it's on top. Delete that. There we are. And now we have our tyre inside the wheel. Let's have a look. Let's see if it's enough of the. Won't let us get too close, will it? It's one of the irritating things. Or another of the irritating, lots of irritating things. Actually, I think the tyre is I think that's still a little bit thick. So let's select it. Tube, it is actually 1 inch. So what I'm going to do, the external radius can't change because that's the internal radius on this part of the wheel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to thin it by increasing the inside radius by 1/4 of an inch. Make it instead of 1 foot 2.5 inches, it's going to be 1 foot 2.75 inches. Does that look? Let's have a quick look back. Okay, pull back to have a overall effect. Yeah, I think we're okay. I think that's okay. So we'll go with that. Now, one of the things about this wheel, which I've just been ignoring up to now, and which we should look at down here, is that it is 774 polys, which is a lot of polys. Now we decided we're going to spend a lot of polys on our wheel. That's okay, but there's a lot that we can save, and eliminating unnecessary polys is one of the joys of making things in Gmax. I use the term loosely. Now what we can do here is before we even agree with all this, I mean, this I've let this be centered over the overall 6 inches of the wheel, but in fact what I can do is make this so that it is there we are, a bit wider. Let me just go back from doing that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate this on itself, because at the moment what it's doing is when I increase the width, it's increasing it on that side. So this is not necessarily the way that you would do this, but I'm just going to demonstrate it. Let's go back and turn that around 180 degrees, and then let's alter the width again, 1/4 of an inch, and it's brought that 1/4 inch flush here. Now if we've got that flush there and we've got this one here, the reason why I'm quite happy to do that is to keep this effect here where this is set in on the wheel, but over here this is inside, this is where the axle's going to be here. You're not going to really see it or notice it in Trainz. So that means we've got two meshes, this mesh here and this mesh here, the red and the yellow, that frankly just butt up against each other like that. Now what was so, it's a bit of a waste to say the least. because we're going to be paying, if we have a look at our wireframe, we're going to be paying for all these polys and then all these polys on the yellow as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to increase or decrease the internal diameter of the flange so as to take in the internal side of the yellow piece, the internal part of that, so that then all of those yellow pieces there on that face, those faces can be deleted. And there's lots of other things we can delete as well. If we look at this, we can delete all of these outer faces of the yellow mesh because they're butting up against and are hidden by the internal faces of the blue. And also if we rotate round, we can see that all of these faces of the blue butt up against these outer faces of the red. So there's no point in having a whole load of faces which are up against each other and are not visible, not part of it. So we're going to save a lot of polys. So this is 774 at the moment. That's the whole lot, isn't it? Including the plane. So it's actually 768. Now the first thing I'm going to do is save it. And I'm going to save it again. Version 1, number 2, version 1, number 1. Yes, please. Thank you for checking. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a clone, but not that way, that way. And I'm going to group the clone. Okay, and I'm just going to push it away and forget about it. And probably I'll end up deleting it, but it's there just in case. So now let's get in and do some chopping. Right. Now that means I'm going to, for the first time now, convert these from the standard primitive of a tube. I'm going to convert it into an editable poly. So that's it, convert that, and look down here, keep an eye down here, polygon count at the moment is 256. By doing that, I take it down half, I halve the poly count. And I'm going to do better than that, because what I'm going to do now is into wireframe and select, let's select that and come down here and it's polygon, and I'm going to select, hold on a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide that red one, just hide, it's not been deleted, just hidden. And what I do is I'll hide the yellow one as well, so we're just left with this rather unpleasant blue. Select the polys and then each selected, and I'm holding down the control key and clicking with my right index finger on the left hand mouse button all the way round. Okay, so we had 128, now I'm going to hit the delete button and we're down to 95 because I've taken too many, so I've taken another one there which I shouldn't have done. Odd numbers, if you're doing this sort of thing, there we are. Now we can delete 96, that sounds right, and you'll soon get used to the look of these things in wireframe. Okay, and then let's unhide all, and one of the things we said we could do is trim off quite a bit of the yellow, and we'll hide everything else. So we've just got this, everything else has been hidden, and the outer, convert that to a editable poly, and remember it's going to be 128, same as the other one because it's just a clone of the other one. And now, oops, keep forgetting that. And now let's just pick up the polys on the outside. And let's get them 2 and 3 while we're at it, because they're all butted up to the inside of that blue mesh that we've just been working on. Zoom around. I know this seems like a very boring, tedious, long term. Process, but it's worth doing. Let's make sure, yeah, 96 look, so we're okay, we haven't chopped out something that we want to keep. But also what we can do, so this is the bit that's going to be covered by the red, that red mesh. So we can zoom around here, take these out. Just going to do that. Oops, not that one. I want to keep that. And you can see that although as part of a group of meshes, it's going to look solid. In fact, what we've done is we've taken out the outer side of the tube and one end of it. Delete isolated versus yes. 64, it's an even number, we're okay. Haven't picked up any bits. Okay, so now let's just unhide everything. And the let's have a look at it. And it still looks the same, hopefully. But what we've done there is we've actually saved a lot of polys. And yet there are still more that can be saved. And I shall do that in my next tutorial, or my next part. What I'm going to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the inside of this red mesh, and I'm going to take the inner faces there out to the edge, which I probably could have done automatically, but I was measuring it all up, but you know, I didn't, I forgot. Maybe they are there. No, they're there already, that's alright. Yeah, I think we're going to be okay. Just look in there, we seem to have, maybe I've got to alter, I think I've still got to alter this, the internal diameter. Anyway, that's where I'm going to leave it for this moment. That gives you an idea. It's worth spending a lot of time on getting things like the wheels right. And so I'm going to, as I say, leave it there. Let's just save it and save as number 2. There we are. Keep our, always keep two copies. That's our, and inside the, 2 copies of the file, and inside the model itself when I'm making it, extra copies of bits which I've been working on, so that if something goes disastrously wrong there, I can go back to here and have another go, or even take odd bits back into there. So there we are. That's the end of this second part of how I'm going to make GWR Open Wagon Class 02. So if you've enjoyed the video, please give me a thumbs up if it's been of any use. And if you have a comment, please post it. I'll be happy to answer it. And also please do subscribe to my channel, because it really does give me a boost and encourages me to do more. So in the next one, we'll be progressing the wheel, bringing in spokes, possibly the axle, and maybe thinking about bringing in some texturing at this stage. But certainly it will be developing the wheel. Reinventing the wheel. Okay, right, well that'll be for the next part.